Oh, please, you ain't gonna slug me, are you?
Maybe not today. But I'm telling you this for the last time. When Dutch comes around, he's gonna leave you some beer. And you're gonna take it. And you're gonna kick him with the dough. If you don't, somebody's gonna drop by here and kick your teeth out one at a time. Get me?
Yeah, and you'll be needing some right away. How many shall we leave?
Oh, two kegs.
You hear that, Dutch? Bring in 5 kegs.
So The Public Enemy is still one of the highlights of the gangster film genre, even today, more than 90 years after its release in 1931. Along with films like The Roaring Twenties, Little Caesar and this, star James Cagney would concretize so many of the themes and character types that would eventually pass into cliché. The Public Enemy is a pre-code film, a film existing before the age of real cinema censorship. It features a lean, no-nonsense directorial work from William Wellman and the near-perfect casting of James Cagney as Tom Powers, the small-time gangster whose rise and ultimate demise the film chronicles. So produced by Warner Brothers, who were then at the forefront of the gangster genre, The Public Enemy has you rooting for the villain of the piece. Fortunately for himself and cinema as a whole, Cagney was originally cast as the lesser of the two thugs, Matt Doyle, ultimately swapping roles with Edward Woods to take on the title role, one which is still synonymous with the actor's career. Let's take a look. Now I want to talk about some of the shocking things that happened in The Public Enemy, some things that had people up in arms in the early 30s and how they obviously pale in comparison to the seemingly no-holds-barred sex and violence that manages to make its way even into popular TV shows these days. But first, The Public Enemy is that age-old tale of the rise and fall, the tale of a couple of working-class Irish childhood buddies growing up petty crooks in the Chicago tenements of the early 20th century, eventually graduating to big-time crimes once Prohibition kicks into gear. The arc of the story follows Powers and Doyle from the social club, where the neighbourhood kids do odd crimes for the resident small-time crime boss, Putty Nose, to their first involvement with a big-time bootlegger, to them living eventually the high life as smart-dressed hoods, and the dangers and tragedy that come with that lifestyle. I suppose it's quite simplistic in a way, but if you've ever seen more than one gangster film, you'll recognise some of the tropes here. So James Cagney, here in only his second year of screen acting, commences his rise to mega movie stardom and lays the foundation for cinematic criminals. Anytime Joe Pesci turns up in a Scorsese film, he probably owes Cagney a debt. Here Cagney is Tom Powers. He plays the son of a cop and the brother of a goody two-shoes war hero. And being the bad apple of the bunch, finds a life of crime offers him more opportunities than going off to fight in the Great War. It's all going really swell, but as is usually the case, even the hardest of hoods can be undone by the fairer sex, and Cagney's no different here as Jean Harlow arrives on the scene and he's temporarily undone before the plot kicks back into gear and his downfall really begins.
You're a spoiled boy, Tommy. You want things and you're not content until you get them. Well, maybe I'm spoiled too. Maybe I feel that way too. But you're not running away from me. Come here.
So at the time of The Public Enemy's release, it was controversial enough to feature a disclaimer at the beginning telling audiences that its design wasn't to glamorise the criminal lifestyle but to educate around the pitfalls of that life of crime. For 1931, it's packed full of violence, almost, as the majority of it happens off-screen, including a totally bizarre sequence resulting in the shooting of a horse, which was quite shocking and upsetting for the time. But it also became infamous for such scenes as Cagney pushing a grapefruit into May Clark's face. No, really, that was well out of order in the 30s.
I wish you was a wishing well, so that I could tie a bucket to you and sink you.
Maybe you found someone you like better.
And also a scene where Matt and Tom are being fitted for suits, which features a clearly gay character, which must have blown the minds of censors and audiences of the 1930s. Cagney's great in it. I was almost going to comment and say you can see why it was removed in 1931, but I think it probably would be removed or reshot at least today also, maybe for different reasons.
31 and a half.
31 and a half.
Don't forget, plenty of room in there.
Oh, sir. Here's where you need the room. Such a muscle.
Well, make it snappy. You're going to find out what it's for. Yeah, come on, let's get out of here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now, Warner Brothers movies of the time were cornering the market in ripped from the headlines social commentary, something they continue to do for decades. There's obviously prohibition commentary and discussion on how attempting to remove something like alcohol from society can only lead to black market profiteering. Incidentally, I've not really got much of an idea where the police are throughout most of this film, as Cagney and co go rough up local bars, forcing them to sell their boss's booze. I also enjoy some of the smaller moments here too. Cagney and his brother discussing the difference between gangsters and soldiers, ultimately in a way both killers but for different reasons.
You murderers! There's not only beer in that keg, there's beer and blood. Blood of men!
Besides, your hands ain't so clean. You killed and liked it. You didn't get them medals by holding hands with them Germans.
Oh, please, Tommy.
I also like that we spend a good chunk of time seeing the dynamic of Tom's family life. The film's as much about Cagney's relationship with his brother and his mother as it is about shooting your way to the top. Now, it's a classic, no doubt, but where the Public Enemy really shows its age is any time a female character is on screen. It's hilariously embarrassing how easy Cagney's character picks up the ladies in this movie.
Hello, baby. What are you going to have?
Anything you say, big boy.
You're a swell dish. I think I'm gonna go for you.
Yeah?
Hey, Tom, look at what I got measured for. I don't even know you're here.
And there's even a beauty of a scene where Cagney, lost in a drunken stupor, is taken advantage of by his boss's girl and is horrified by it the following morning.
You aren't sorry, are you?
Sorry? Sorry for what?
For last night.
What do you mean, for getting drunk?
Aren't you the little play actor?
Wait a minute. Do you mean it?
So the movie was directed by William Wellman, who made over 80 movies, most of them forgotten now, but his claim to fame was that he directed Wings in 1927, the first film to win the Best Picture Oscar. Incidentally, also he directed the first full-colour film to be nominated for Best Picture, the 1937 version of A Star is Born. The Public Enemy was just one of 5 films he made in 1931 alone. Now, his directing here is mostly no frills, with the exception of a few standout moments, a rain-soaked shootout being a personal favourite of mine, along with a chilling final shot that I won't spoil here. So The Public Enemy came out around the same time as Little Caesar, starring Edward G. Robinson, another rise and fall gangster film, and although they weren't technically the first cinematic gangsters, Robinson and Cagney would go on to star in so many great crime thrillers across the next decade and a half that they'd never escape the typecasting of that small-time hood trying to make it big. Now, that being said, as important a film as this is, it is ultimately carried by an actor with so much screen presence, delivering a performance of such intensity that any other criticism is pretty insignificant. Go check it out.
Well, you know. You ain't so smart. Books and all that stuff don't hide everything.
You're a liar, Tom. You're covering up.
Covering up for what? For you? Why, you're nothing but a sneak thief.
What did you say?
You heard me, a petty larceny sneak thief, a nickel snatcher, robbing a streetcar company.